Hello and welcome back to the Orlando Adventures podcast. I'm your host Russ, and today's episode is the Disney on a budget one. So a few months ago now, I did an episode called Orlando on a Budget, and it was quite a hit. I will be absolutely honest with you, it's one of my most popular episodes to date, and I think quite a lot of people enjoyed it, and quite a lot of people enjoyed listening to that episode because it's one of those topics that not many people want to talk about. Not many people want to get into the financials. Not many people want to get into the costs and the actual talking about money when it comes to Orlando. Obviously, this is a holiday. This is an experience. This is a lifestyle that realistically is quite expensive. And I'm going to be absolutely real with you on that. And I love it. I absolutely love it. But we all get sucked in. We all get sucked in by Orlando and Florida and Disney and Universal and everything that it is that they have to offer us. Well, off the back of that first episode, I wanted to do a slightly different one. I wanted to do an episode based entirely on Disney. And, you know, there's always going to be ways that you can save money, inevitably. But I don't want to just tell you not to do things, if you know what I mean. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to run through a bit of a list of things that essentially you might be able to kind of negotiate on with regards to the budget. There's quite a few different factors when thinking about your Disney experience and your Disney holiday. So the first thing that comes to mind with regards to how to do your Disney trip on a budget would be the time of year that you go. So realistically, obviously you can go, you can only go when you can go. Obviously, if you are tied to things such as the summer holidays or you're tied to the school holidays, then obviously those are the times of year that you're going to be able to go. But there's always alternatives, and if you are basically fairly flexible in terms of when you can actually make it out to Orlando, then there's quite a few different times of year to avoid, so to speak. Like, obviously avoid the holidays, avoid the kind of American holidays as well. You might want to avoid times of year where there's events such as things like Halloween Horror Nights, unfortunately, or Christmas as well. And also you're going to want to avoid Easter. Easter, I'm pretty sure, is the most expensive time of year that you can possibly go to Orlando. Obviously, if you can avoid any of these dates, then you're going to put yourself in basically the best position for you to have a chance at doing Disney on more of a budget. And I think of months such as like February or February, March. Those are months that potentially might end up being quite a lot cheaper than if you were to go in maybe, I don't know, April or October or December. And, you know, like I said, I appreciate that that's not going to be the case for everyone. Not everyone is going to be able to go on some of these dates, but it's always worth just doing a comparison. And the reason why I say this is because sometimes you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised that actually, if you are tied to school holidays, for example, that sometimes you'll look at a month and think that it's going to be cheaper. So you might think that sometime like October is going to be cheaper. And it might turn out that somewhere like the summer holidays is actually a more cost-effective time to go, for example. The next little thing that we can look at with regards to trying to do Disney on a budget is hotels. Now, a lot of you will know that I've never stayed on site. It's about to change. It's about to change in less than a month, and it's going to change considerably by this time next year. I can promise you that much. There's lots of plans. There's plans in the motions. There's plans that have maybe already happened. We will see. But ultimately, with regards to hotels, and I'm doing this episode based on I am going to Disney. I'm going to stay at Disney. I'm going to eat and drink at Disney. I'm going to go to all the parks at Disney. You know, so basically everything you're going to do is going to be a Disney experience. Therefore, you might not want to do the staying off site. That isn't the way that you're looking to do your holiday. You want to be immersed. You want to be in the bubble, which is absolutely fair enough. So if you're going to do a Disney trip on a budget, then you're going to want to stay at one of the more budget hotels. You are going to want to stay at, more than likely, one of the 3 all-star resorts. So you've got All-Star Sports, All-Star Movies, and All-Star Music. Now, obviously, these hotels are a lot more basic than some of the other hotels that Disney have on offer. But obviously, you know, I'm sure you've all watched a lot of vlogs and you've seen various Instagram posts. These hotels are still a high standard. They're still exceptional hotels. They still have amazing amenities, and they obviously, you know, are heavily themed as well. They're very Disney, which to some people is exciting, to some people might not be. But ultimately, you are going to want to try and do one of the more budget-friendly resorts. And with regards to how to book these, it's a difficult one, because nowadays, like I said in the original episode, when I did Orlando on a budget, I was saying that you could go down the route of using like your Flying Club points, for example, Virgin Flying Club points, to be able to get out there cheaper. Well, it might work out that if you're trying to go in, for example, the summer holidays, that you've basically been priced out of that because of the way that Virgin have changed their points. So you might actually find that booking this as a package and through a travel agent actually could end up being a cheaper way to do this at this point. Obviously, you can always book your trips separately as well. That generally seems to knock a little bit off the price, but you never know. Like, ultimately, unless you go to a travel agent, you're gonna struggle to find out a comparison. I personally would always try and like give someone the opportunity and have a conversation with someone. That is going to be better. And I appreciate we're in a day and age where people like to do stuff online and we do stuff without speaking to anyone. But ultimately, this you know, it's still a big experience. It's a big decision. So if you can speak to an expert in their field with regards to like a Virgin travel agent, for example, then absolutely do it. And I think of Chloe from Parks and Pals. Like, genuinely, this is somebody who runs a fellow podcast, and obviously her Disney knowledge is exceptional. And I use her as an example because she clearly knows her stuff about Disney. She clearly knows her stuff about Orlando. So if I were to book a trip, I would absolutely go and have a chat with Chloe. 100% would. And realistically, like, she's going to want you to have the best experience in Orlando. So she's going to want to try and help you as much as possible. And obviously, if you go with a budget, then she's likely going to be able to assist you as well. So a little plug for Chloe from Parks and Pals, but genuinely, she's absolutely fantastic. So if you get a chance, do go and give her send them a message, or just go and approach Parks and Pals for Chloe to be able to potentially help you with your holiday booking. But yeah, like I was saying, you basically have loads of options. You can do it for a travel agency, or you could look to try and book it separately yourself. You can go on loads of comparison websites, find out the cost of just booking the Disney hotel on its own. You don't have to book it directly through Disney. Ultimately, do the comparisons. Like, if it's going to save you $20 to book it via a third party than to book it through Disney, I think I would rather go through Disney personally. But, you know, each to their own, isn't it? So that is something to take into consideration. And also, with regards to hotels, there is the small matter of parking. So I've mentioned this in previous episodes, I'm absolutely sure of it, but if you basically plan on having a hire car, you are going to need to park when you go to the actual parks themselves. So you are going to need to drive there, you're going to need to park, and parking realistically is not the cheapest when you go to these theme parks. Parking can cost, realistically, I think anywhere from about $25 up to about $45 if you go for like preferred, I believe. But I'm pretty sure the general parking is like $30 off the top of my head. Well, $30, say you're doing a 2-week trip and you go to parks, say you even go 10 of those times, say you even go 10 of those days, That's $300 in parking. Like, you've basically, by staying at Disney, you saved yourself $300 just by staying at a Disney hotel. So, yeah, you might be able to stay off site for slightly cheaper, but that is another thing to consider. It is worth thinking about, and also thinking about the actual fact that you're going to be a lot closer and you're actually going to be in the bubble. You're going to do a lot less time traveling than what potentially you would do if you stayed off site. And these are things that I've had to get my head around as well. Like, I've had to understand this because, like I said at the start, I've always been an off-site guy, but I'm really coming around to the idea and the thought of kind of just being in amongst it and making the actual experience and the trip a lot easier for myself. So that is something that I definitely would consider. You are going to save money by parking, but obviously if you were to do this on a budget and you wanted to save even more, then obviously you can utilize things like the transport at Disney itself. So obviously you've got the buses if you were to stay at the All-Star resorts, and then if you went to any of the Skyliner resorts, you've got access to the Skyliner, and then, you know, and beyond that as well. But ultimately, if you are going to do this on a budget, if you stay on site at Disney, you do get the complimentary transfers included with your trip anyway. So that is always worth thinking about. The next thing I would kind of get into would be things such as food and drinks. Well, food and drinks is an interesting one. Obviously, I'm pretty sure that the dining plan deal has ended now. So that was a thing for the majority of this year, and you know, if you didn't book a dining plan deal, then, you know, unfortunately at this point in time you may have missed out. But that's not to say that it won't come back in the future at some point. But always look for these kinds of deals. If there is an option for you to basically get any form of kind of like food, drink or dining included in a booking, it's worth just doing the maths on it. It's worth working out kind of what you are going to spend, because when you go and do these trips, inevitably you are going to spend money on food and drinks, and that is an absolute given. Getting into food and drinks when you go into the parks, obviously theme park food is not the cheapest. And, you know, when I did the Orlando in a budget episode, I said about bringing in, like, you know, potentially like food from the outside and going to your Walmart, stuff like that. Well, I'm talking about doing Disney. So if you are like, well, I want to eat at Disney, I want to eat Disney food, then obviously there's different ways to do it. You can do it slightly more on a budget, of course. Realistically, you are going to go to places like quick serves over restaurants. So if you are going to try and do this on more of a budget, that is going to be the avenue to go down. I know, I'm pretty sure in the first episode I did talk about potentially either sharing meals. So we know that in America, the portion sizes generally are pretty generous. So that is something to consider 100%. And also thinking about things such as potentially going for like a children's meal if you're an adult. Obviously, if you're a child, then fair enough. But if you are an adult and you feel like you don't have a massive appetite, getting a children's meal could be a viable option for just doing it on slightly more of a budget than what it would have been going for full adult meals. I know that there's going to always be the temptation of doing things such as dining around the world, Epcot and stuff like that, which realistically, and I'll say it adds up and it does start getting quite expensive quite quick. That's not to say don't do it. This episode isn't for me to tell you how to do something on a budget is to just not do it, because that's not helpful. The helpful thing to do is to give you an option. Well, obviously, you know, this is very, very obvious, and I've just kind of said it, but going around somewhere like World Showcase, if you want to try all of these different things, if you're in a couple, for example, then get stuff and get it to share. At least that way you can get through. If it's a case of you wanted to try loads of different foods and drinks, then that way you can get through more without spending more. So you might, obviously you're going to have half as much of everything, but at least then you're going to have the experience of trying all of these different foods around the world. Same thing with drinks, and like, realistically, you do need to stay hydrated. So I've said this before as well, you absolutely do need to drink while you are out in Orlando. That is an absolute given. But realistically, you can get things like ice water for free. So if you just go into like a Starbucks and get an ice water, absolutely ask for it. Don't use the water fountains. I will tell you that much, because they are the weirdest thing in existence. Honestly, maybe I'm just like, it might just be me. I'm pretty sure it's like lukewarm. It's weird. It just, yeah. If you've done it once, you've never done it again. I'm sure of that. And like, we've all been thirsty, but then you drink it and go, whoa, that's not right. So yeah, absolutely. If you can go and grab yourself like an ice water, that's way cheaper. It's always an option, and absolutely make sure that you drink enough out in Orlando. Next thing that I was going to go through is the lightning lanes. And honestly, I've wanted to do an episode for a while about like the new lightning lane system. But quite honestly, I haven't got my PhD in trying to work out how the hell this thing works yet. I just cannot get my head around it. And I'm sure it's so simple. I'm sure it is. But the problem is I haven't done it. So I don't want to give you guys advice on something that I haven't done. And then I don't want to basically tell you, oh, you've just got to do this or this or this, when I haven't done it, so I don't know. So that's the reason why I haven't done it. If there's ever an episode I haven't done, generally it's because I haven't done it and I don't feel confident in talking about it and giving advice on it. Obviously, I don't do many of these advice episodes. I do more of like opinions and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we always try and keep the content a bit fresh, keep the content different, and I always want to give advice if I can and be informative yet entertaining where possible. Anyway, so after that slight tangent, with regards to lightning lanes, I mean, realistically, I don't want to tell you not to get them. What I will tell you, because obviously they do come at a cost, what I will tell you is the alternative is having longer days. So, if you want to get lightning lanes, if you wanted to do like what was the Genie Plus system, and you want to like tick off 3 rides in the day by basically fast passing them, essentially, then I understand. But at the same time, maybe the way to go is to rope drop the park, rope drop it. That way you can, I think of Hollywood Studios, rope drop the park, go to Rise of the Resistance first. If that's the ride that you want to get on, go there first. If it's Tower of Terror, for example, it doesn't matter what it is, but whatever your non-negotiable is, get to that ride first. Get there at the start of the day when not everybody has started their day at the park yet. It's always an option, so do that. But I will also say stay till park close. So with that, you basically obviously have some parks have extended hours. You can stay there till quite late in the evening, and the crowd levels might drop. The crowd levels might drop as a result of either the park closing quite soon, or the crowd levels might drop as a result of things such as the fireworks and the shows. So while people are watching the shows, then that might be a good opportunity to go into queues for rides if you are not bothered about the shows, for example. That's the option I would go with. That's basically what I would say. I would say make the most out of your day. Now, I fully appreciate that getting something like a lightning lane can really it streamlines your day. There's no doubt about it. It makes your day shorter, but it comes at a cost ultimately. So if your experience is all about you doing all of these rides, for example, then the time that you spend in the park isn't necessarily the worry. What the priority is about just getting the stuff done. So, if you are there for 8 hours, fantastic. But if you end up being there for 12 hours, then as long as you got the stuff you wanted to get done, then it might not matter to you. But that is something to weigh up. It's something to consider, because also at the same time, and I appreciate that in this episode, we're talking about staying at Disney and doing Disney. But if you were to, for example, want to go and dine off-site, but you were having to stay till the end of the day at the park to get the park done, then obviously dining off-site might not become as much of an option right at the end of the day. So it is something worth weighing up. It absolutely is. But realistically, we're talking about doing it on a budget. So that is the way to do it on a budget. And, I appreciate I'm basically telling you to just not do it and to just be at the park for longer. But you've paid for your entry to the park. So make the most of it. Make the most of your experience and your time there in the park. Next little thing, and this kind of ties into the same thing a little bit, is after hour events. So obviously there are quite a few after hours events and they look stunning. They really do. And realistically, I know a lot of people speak about these after hours events and they say that obviously they include quite a lot and they're very exciting to be able to be in the parks at night and to be able to see different stuff and experience these rides in the dark as well. But ultimately they do come at a cost. They are slightly more on the pricier side, which would probably be fair to say. But is there an alternative? Well, realistically, not really, because they're quite unique. They're quite unique experiences. But a little bit like what I was just saying, if you were to stay till kind of like park close, for example, when the fireworks shows and stuff like that are on, that's a good time to go and get on some rides. If you are basically planning to do rides, then and you're not bothered about shows, go and do them while like things like the fireworks are on, because the crowd levels are going to drop significantly. And this is the same thing said for things like parades and stuff as well. But yeah, that would be my bit of advice with regards to after hours events. Next little thing with regards to budgeting, and this is not a thing that basically comes hand in hand with budgeting. It is merch, getting merchandise. Obviously, we're all a sucker for it. We really are. We're a sucker for being in these Disney parks, and you're on holiday. You're on holiday, so why not treat yourself? And absolutely, you absolutely should. The last thing you want to do, and I've said this before as well, is come home and regret having not bought something. I would rather come home and be happy with the fact that I went and got this thing because I wanted it. So ultimately, with regards to merch, there's a couple of ways to approach this, and I don't want to be like, don't buy it, because that's no fun. That isn't any fun at all. So the thing I would do, if you are absolutely hell-bent on getting official Disney merch in Orlando, but you want to do this on a budget, then I will say, I think going to like the outlets and going to, is it called the Character Warehouse? Is that the one? Go somewhere like that. At least that way you're going to get your official Disney merch in Orlando. And I appreciate it's not in the park, but going somewhere like that, at least then you have the opportunity to go and get some of these items quite a bit cheaper than what you would if you were actually in a park. No, I appreciate that is just like, it's fairly obvious stuff. It is, but at the same time, some people might not think of it. Some people might think, well, I can't afford it in the park, so I just won't get it. And obviously that's a way to save money, but you still want to get the most out of your experience. And if getting the most out of your experience means getting some merch and getting a lounge fly or getting some ears or whatever it may be, then absolutely go and check out one of the Disney Character Warehouse kind of setups, the outlets, because you are going to find some bargains if you do a little bit of hunting. And the final thing with regards to doing Disney on a budget is tickets. Now, this is a difficult one because the cost of the tickets generally are the cost of the tickets. They are what they are. So quite often, a lot of us Brits traveling over are going to buy a 14-day ticket. That seems to be the go-to. However, like some people, for example, might only be going for a week and they might be doing 4 days in Disney. Well, if you buy, it might feel a bit weird. You're going to go for a week, but you're only going to do 4 days in Disney. It might feel a bit weird for you to try and buy a 14-day ticket. That sounds a bit baffling, right? But at the same time, if you weigh it up and go, right, how much is a single day ticket? Well, depending when you go, obviously the price of the tickets do change, but they can go up as high, I'm pretty sure, as like $180 a day, which is quite a lot of money. Like, obviously, if you're going to be spending like best part of 140 quid on one ticket to get into a park, like, you might as well, unless you're going for literally like 2 days. If you're going for anything more than that, I'm pretty sure it's way more cost effective just to get like a 14-day ticket. And again, that might be fairly obvious stuff, but ultimately some people might not know that. Some people might just think, well, I'm only going for 1 day, so I'll just book 1 day. Like, I don't think it's the way to do it. And certainly do not turn up at the park without a ticket and buy at the gate, because you are going to pay the most expensive price there possibly is. So just do a bit of planning. And I've said this before as well, but just come prepared. Come prepared. Be prepared for having your days kind of set out, know where you're going to go. So make sure that you've got your tickets set up already. Obviously, you can buy your tickets directly through Disney, but there are like third parties as well. You could basically go to like a comparison site, such as something like, I don't know, I think like, is it Attraction Tickets, Florida Tix, those kind of ones. They are going to offer options with regards to tickets as well. And you might find that they got good deals. You might find they don't. Often, I'm pretty sure they pump up the price of it, and then they basically offer you like a 10% discount to make it look like a better deal. It's worth a comparison. If you're going to save yourself like 50, 60, 70 quid by booking it for a third party, it might be worth doing. Because ultimately, if you're going to book for a few different people, then that's quite a lot of money saved in the grand scheme of things. And the final thing to touch on, I suppose, is annual passes. Well, if we're talking about budget, buying an annual pass probably doesn't feel very budget friendly. Well, it's not. But at the same time, a little bit like what I was just saying with the 14-day ticket, if you're going to try and do multiple trips, and we're talking about trying to do multiple trips, but trying to do it on a budget, then it might be worth investing in something like an annual pass. It might be worth actually putting the money up in your first trip and then having the benefit of your second and third trip, for example, actually end up being quite a lot less and being able to save quite a lot of money by not having to buy tickets every single time you go out there. It's just a thought. And you know what? It's not for everyone, because these holidays, they are expensive. They typically, and I know we always joke about the once in a lifetime, isn't a once in a lifetime. For some people it is, and I fully respect that, and I fully understand it as well. And I feel quite fortunate that I've been multiple times, and I have obviously multiple trips in the pipeline for actually going back. But obviously, just trying to do this on a budget, it is difficult. It really is. But it's all about doing your research. It's all about doing your research and just doing a little bit more, and spending a little bit more time in trying to find out more about the park, trying to find out more about the hotels, trying to find out more about the food options and the parking and the ticket options. There's a lot of variables, and it can be a bit of a minefield. That's absolutely the case. It really, really is. But there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of vlogs out there. There's a certain podcast called Orlando Adventures Podcast who is nearly 80 episodes deep, and he's covered a few topics at this point. Yeah, so there really, really is quite a wealth of knowledge out there from various different sources to be able to help you try and do these trips for slightly less than what you may perceive. I know there's a perception that this is a really expensive holiday, and trust me, like, I know that this isn't cheap, but at the same time, I always do the comparison. And there's a reason why I haven't gone to like Disneyland Paris, for example, and I really do want to go. But I've weighed this up a couple of times, and in my mind, I don't think Orlando's that much more expensive. It could well be, and I might be looking at it through really Orlando tinted glasses. So it might well be, but I genuinely, I think if you can do this trip sensibly and with quite a lot of planning, it can become very, very achievable for a lot less than what you might initially think. So this has been good fun, and I hope that it's useful, and I hope that it's helpful. And I always feel a little bit awkward doing like informative episodes at times, because I don't want to just tell you all stuff that you've heard before or stuff that you already know, but ultimately, hopefully for somebody, this is useful. And that's what this community is about, isn't it? It's about trying to help each other and to be beneficial and to be there to try and help other people. And from the start of doing this podcast, if I could have helped anyone achieve a dream in that respect, I know it sounds a bit corny, but achieve a dream of getting out to Orlando and making that kind of dream a reality by just like having a bit more information and a bit more kind of know-how to go into booking one of these trips, then I feel very, very accomplished. I really do. As ever, I've loved recording this episode. I've loved doing the podcast. There's obviously a lot more to come, but we are in December, so I appreciate December is going to be a bit more of a quieter month potentially from a podcast point of view. But if anyone does listen, and I genuinely mean this, please do share, because it means so much. And podcasting, it's a fair bit of work. I'm going to be absolutely real with you, but I love it. I do love doing this, and I wouldn't be putting out as much content as I do if I didn't enjoy it. I absolutely love doing this, but I've got quite a lot of episodes to kind of get done and get planned ahead for when I go on my trip later on in December, and I'm so excited. I really, really am. And the final thing I wanted to touch on is that for anyone who is interested in the Orlando Adventures merch, I know that I haven't spoke about it all that much, and I basically, I don't want to kind of like force it down anyone's throat, but realistically, the website is there. So Orlando Adventures, the website is live, and there are t-shirts in stock. There's t-shirts, there's pins. So there are options on the website of actual stock. And while the stocks last, because I won't replenish the stock until next year at least at this point. So, if you're looking to get a t-shirt, go and snag one, because I can't guarantee that the sizes are gonna stay around forever. At the moment, I've got a fairly good amount of sizes available. I don't think there's many not in stock, but I just don't want anyone to be disappointed, because the lead times are quite long for me to get more stock in. Anyway, that's my little preachy bit done. I hope you've all enjoyed this episode. I really, really do. And I appreciate you all so, so much. I really, really love doing this. And ultimately, we've got many, many more episodes to come. So thank you for listening, and I will speak to you all in the next one.